Hello, hello. The markets, especially in crypto, might be feeling a little bit of vertigo. We have so much on today's show. We're going to talk about the recent Bitcoin flash crash. We got the stock market, which is up only, even though we're in the stock blackout window, corporate stocks, a little bit harder to buy those now. We're going to take a look at some of the Forex moves and also the Hang Seng, which had a really big move over the weekend. All that and more on today's episode of Money Never Sleeps. Welcome back to Money Never Sleeps. Before we get into anything, remember, we are just two guys that love talking about the markets. We are not financial advisors. We can never give you financial advice. Even if we were financial advisors, we wouldn't do it on YouTube. What we are doing here today is 100% talking about our opinions, thoughts, and everything on the market, what we're doing. We're just here to have fun, guys. So if you're going to make any trades or anything like that, do your own research, talk to your own financial advisor. Mr. House, thank you for joining me today on this beautiful day. You know, it might not have been a beautiful day yesterday. It was a Sunday, bloody Sunday for Bitcoin. Absolutely flash crash, tanked. I hope you're enjoying all these YouTube references. I got so many more today. How are we doing today?
Oh, doing good. Yeah, as Kevin may have alluded to 4 times already, and probably several more times throughout the show. I saw you too. It was great. Definitely a little bit of a slower Monday for me personally. But after watching the markets, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some fast shakeups throughout the week, just testing out the waters and seeing where sentiment is.
Yeah, dude. I mean, let's put it this way. I haven't been watching crypto nearly as much because I'm kind of under the assumption that, okay, we're in a little bit of a fraudulent market in terms of stable coins and price manipulation. And when I saw that crash last night, I was thinking two things. One, we saw those funding rates a few days ago. That made a lot of sense why we saw that bit of that flash crash. Everybody was fucking max long. So that kind of tells me that that was a huge liquidation for perps. We'll take a look at some of the liquidation levels and see how much got liquidated from the market itself. But also the other thing that told me is this is a highly illiquid market. And the thing with a highly illiquid market, and again, we could say that, oh yeah, the Bitcoin's 40,000, but let's talk about liquidity here. When the market is illiquid, you can move that price in either direction super easily. And that market moved in either direction, yesterday, obviously to the downside, even today it's still down. But, in the months prior, in the weeks prior, we saw that price just shoot up fast, like out of nowhere with low volume or faux volume, if you want to even go there. So it's really interesting to see that. I thought that was like kind of just telling me that we are still in this market, that we need to be cautious because it's liquidation season going into the end of the year. Santa is not happy with everyone. He's throwing out coal, especially for a lot of people who are going long a little bit too late. We'll take a look at the charts and see also where the parallel channels and everything signed up for Bitcoin. But let's get into a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. Let's start with TradFi, just because that's a little bit more of the stuff that we have to anticipate going into tomorrow. Now, tomorrow we do have the CPI data coming out. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Now, on Friday's show, we were talking about how unemployment number could have been a little bit fudged. I'm not saying it is, but I think we will see a bit of a revision going forward. Now, the question is that revision in line with what we're going to get for the CPI print tomorrow is going to be really important in seeing how the markets react. And I think the markets are going to react the wrong way to data that's probably going to be very, very incriminating of the fact that we are actually in a deflationary period in moving forward. Rates just they overhyped. The rate hikes are too high for too long, and it's unfortunate, but it's a lagging indicator to see where the market is. And if we're starting to see inflation start to tick down, and inflation start to tick down while unemployment, even past whatever tomorrow's reading is, tick up, then that tells us that we are in a pretty big contraction moving forward. But to start with it, we're going to take a look at the S&P because we do know that the stock buyback window is closed. There is a blackout window. There was $5 billion, I believe, a day that was coming in from these companies into the equity market, and we are not seeing that today. There's a little bit of move up for about 0.33% or so, and we're just trading in this massive bear flag, pushing to the upside, if you want to call this a pull, even though there's a massive gap there. But we're seeing that we are getting pretty overbought, and we're kind of been in this range that's not necessarily too great, right? Let's go to the origin to where we are currently. It's up 2.74%. I mean, it's a parallel channel. It could break down from there. If it breaks down from there, we would anticipate roughly, at least the origin would be tested, but we know that there is a fat gap right down there from where the pole starts. So, I mean, if we go down to the origin, 2.74%, that whole thing is pretty much just eaten up. If we go and fill this gap, it's 4.27%. And the thing is, we're getting pretty close to resistance up here. And we can see on the stochastic RSI, we are getting pretty close to overbought. We're at 75 and 47. I anticipate with a green day today, that's going to push the S&P up a little bit further on the stochastic RSI. And then if we zoom out of this a little bit further here, obviously we're in patterns within patterns, and eventually we probably are going to test some of these lower levels. I mean, 44.75 or so on the macro is going to be really important to test. If that doesn't hold, then obviously we're probably going to fill out a good chunk of these gaps that are down here. But it doesn't surprise me that going into CPI, we're up a little bit on the day. I mean, if you look at NASDAQ, it's up 0.8. It's nothing crazy, right? We're still at pretty good levels of resistance, or, NASDAQ looks like it's putting in another yearly high. So that one, it's nothing too crazy. It's not like a 400, 500 point day. It's pretty good. And then once again, with the Dow, we are literally at the top of this parallel channel. So that's where everything kind of lines up going into tomorrow. I think that, yes, markets are overbought. And if I'm wrong, if you disagree with me 100%, let me know. But I think that the markets are extremely overbought. We're kind of anticipating that inflation is going to come down tomorrow. That's my belief. I think we're either flat or we're going to come down. And if that's the case, markets are going to be unsure how to react. Either they're going to react very positively, at first, because they're like, oh, inflation's coming down. But then I think a lot of the big money is going to start to realize, oh shit, inflation's coming down, but we're still at 5.5 for the federal funds rate. So that's kind of what the interesting thing is going to be, especially as we head into the end of the year. Come New Year's Day, that's going to be a different story. There's another YouTube reference. But House, let me get your thoughts on what you're anticipating with the markets. Do you think that kind of lines up with what we're seeing in the charts today, or do you think that we're going to see a face melting all-time high to 5,000 or 5,200, like some of these investment banks are saying by, January 19th, which is OPEX or something like that?
No, I think I'm more aligned with your side, right? I think it's always interesting over holiday season, and seeing where everything lands post Christmas. But no, I mean, we were talking pre-show. We've kind of shared a similar bearish sentiment for a while, but a lot of that just seem to be getting postponed. Whether that's because credit keeps getting extended and debt's getting higher, or someone just keeps shifting some numbers that we may not think are portrayed accurately. But I think we may see a little bit more upward momentum, but I don't know, man. At this point, whatever happens, and I think I'm just a fool.
I think we're all fools for even fucking participating in this market sometimes. Like, let's put it this way. I don't believe in the system one bit. And we're talking about the financial system here, right? But if you know how they play the game, then there's a good chance you could still make some money in it. And even at that, I'm questioning myself, like, am I out of my mind in what I'm doing sometimes? The question is, yes, probably for even participating in this. But let's look at Forex a little bit. It's really interesting. Before we get into that, let's take a look at the VIX. VIX, guys, is being crushed. It's absolutely just been staying down here for the past few days. Look at that. That's consolidation. And obviously, we're extremely overbought on the daily. Could we get another little wick down? Absolutely. But I do want to see this consolidation kind of move here. Kind of gives me a bit of fear in the market, because that's very similar to what we've seen in the past before it starts taking off. Like, obviously, 2020, we saw a little bit of that. I want to say it's February 2018. That was Volmageddon. But I always get the dates wrong, I feel. But let's look, February 2018. Yeah, it was. Okay, it was. So yeah, it was consolidation here in November 2017 all the way throughout till late January into early February of 2018. And then you just see the VIX, trading somewhere around 9 or so, 10. And in like 2-3 days, within the 1 week candle, it's up at 50. And that's a really interesting day, because I want to say that the Dow was down over 1,200 or so, something like that. But it was just a huge amount of volume. These machines were just absolutely moving their positions back and forth so fast, to the point that, there just turned out to be a ton of volatility. That's the danger of having this here too. So many people are shorting the VIX. They're continuing to short the VIX, that eventually that trade's not going to work anymore, and people are going to just start betting on volatility. The stocks are going to start coming down, and that's just going to shoot that up faster. And you could see it's very possible for people to blow their entire portfolios thinking that this is easy money here, shorting the VIX. So I'm really excited to see what happens from this, because if people are shorting this thing like crazy, and we do know that in the equity market there are less, I think it's the lowest number of bearish position that we've seen since 2021 right now. I think a lot of people are just believing that, okay, it's up only season. If people get the trade wrong, this is just going to be catastrophic for hedge funds and a lot of other people who bought these contracts expecting them to be, continuing to crush the VIX. It's easy to make money crushing the VIX. It's not as easy finding a time in which it does decide to pump. That's something that the market 100% will humble you on. So that's something I'm kind of watching going into the end of the year, into January. I think January, February, we might see something more a bigger move with the VIX. But with the dollar, nothing necessarily has changed when we look at this. I'm going to just delete some of my stupid Elliott wave theory. It's not that it's stupid. It's just that it's blocking everything that we need to see here. So the dollar is really interesting because on the daily, yes, it's overbought and needs to come down. In my opinion, if we keep finding resistance on the 200 EMA, that's not a great sign. We're outside of the parallel channel, which tells me that this is going to hopefully hold as support. If we're not able to hold support, obviously we're going to have to come back into this. But I do think that when we look at this on the macro time frames, I mean, just look at the 3-day, oversold, weekly, oversold, monthly, still in the oversold territory, and there's plenty of room to go up. And we do know that a lot of these banks and financial institutions in the globe and globally are betting on the euro dollar, expecting those to be the high demand currency. I mean, it's a matter of time. If equities do sell off, obviously they're going to sell off into the dollar, so that's going to help the DXY in my opinion. But if we look at this on the daily, I want to show you this. Obviously, yes, we're finding resistance here, and everyone knows that I'm long on the dollar right now. I'm very bullish. However, I do know that with CPI, there is a lot of fuckery that goes on with the dollar and speculation, and I think that we're going to see a lot of that tomorrow. So I did open up. I bought a put on the U.S. dollar, expecting it to go down in the short term. I mean, if that's the case, obviously I'm still hedged long term to see how that plays out. The one that I grabbed was UDN, I believe. That's short. It's a bearish short on, or whatever index. It's the Invesco DB USD index bearish ETF. So yeah, if we start to see some pain in the CPI number where people are just betting on equities, obviously I'll ride that up in the short term, take advantage of it, while the daily stochastic RSI corrects. But the long-term one, obviously, for me is the UUP, which is the bullish outlook for the dollar. So that's just my play when I look at Forex, because other things that are really interesting when I look at this is that Japan is for the yen is at a very critical level where we broke out of the parallel channel. We found support on the 200 MA on the daily. Got plenty of room to the upside on the daily. I'm thinking we have to test this 50 moving average once again. And if that's the case and we test it and we find support back on that parallel channel, then nothing's changed, even despite that huge crush that we got a few days ago. And we're seeing other currencies also seeing some pain too, right? We know that the euro is at a pretty critical level. Yeah, the daily it could go up a little bit, kind of lines with CPI and all that stuff going forward. But on the weekly, this thing needs to come down. And there's a good chance that I think that the euro comes down to parity with the dollar. And if that's the case, the dollar is going to soar. I mean, I think it was over the weekend we saw the yuan go all the way to 218. Or no, my bad, 718. 718. So obviously printing a ton of money and not a lot of demand, that's going to drive that thing straight up against the US dollar. So it takes more yuan to buy one USD. And it kind of lines in with what we're going to talk about here. This is the Hang Seng, which last night was below 16,000. And now that's a critical level because we do know where we were last time we were at 16K, right? That was November 2022. Obviously October, that was the October low for the markets, but that was a very bad time. This thing is quietly bleeding out. No one's talking about China or the Chinese stock market at all. We know that the property sector is in very, very critical point. And we also know that even a lot of these banks that have, exposure to others, like if you want to just bring in crypto, I know that Tether has exposure to Evergrande. We're going to get, that liquidation information come January, I think 29th of next month. So that's going to be really interesting to see this. I mean, we haven't even seen the fire sale yet, and we're already down this low. Very, very scary. I mean, even if we look back to 2008, where is that? 2008, that puts us roughly right around here. That's at 10, so about 10,000 or so. I mean, without any major crash, we've already dropped a significant amount since April of 2021, and we have not necessarily seen any relief to the upside. We're down 48% right now as we speak about the Hang Seng. How much further does this go? Even if there is no collapse yet, eventually there's going to have to be a blow up top to the downside. That's what I would anticipate and seeing where this thing bottoms. But Yeah, dude, it doesn't look good for this index at all, and I think it's one that people should be paying attention to more. Same thing with Japan, but this one is very scary in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking on here about what's been happening. Two of the largest real estate holding companies in China have gone bottoms up essentially. And yeah, I mean, there's been some impact on trade between the US and China at the same time. So, I mean, they got a lot to figure out, right? I think
Yeah.
the number was somewhere around like 2.3 million unfinished homes or maybe more. Um, and yeah, I mean, that's, I mean, come on, that's, you can't do that.
I also like how we're so disconnected from what's going on in the East, just as much as we're disconnected from what's going on in Eurozone, right? Like there's just things that are just absolutely scary, but we just don't see the headlines anywhere. We just don't care about the data that we're seeing. Like this scares me because we haven't gotten the Evergrande collapse. We haven't gotten anything that's absolutely just, the straw that broke the camel's back. This is 100% just natural selling. Stimulus is not working. There is low demand. I saw somewhere where I think it was it was in China, but I'm trying to think exactly what the price was. It was 79 cents or so for a pound of chicken. That was, and no one was buying it. There was just like tons of it in the store. Obviously, that's an anecdote, but that just shows you that there is no demand necessarily right now, even for goods that are extremely cheap. The thing that is really scary when we get into deflation, which we need to be worried about here, is consumers don't necessarily think that, okay, if prices are coming down, I mean, what they do think is if prices are coming down, let me wait to buy this in a week or so. Let me see how low the prices go, right? And that in turn creates one of the worst, death spirals for not only unemployment or the market, but just the economy in general. And you could be seeing massive deflation. And a lot of this stems back from 2008. Let's not kid ourselves, right? We're not paying off debt when we're having periods of time of economic opportunity. Instead, we're borrowing more, and eventually that just kills the debt to GDP ratio. And once that demand finally does dry up, then you're just kind of sitting there absolutely fucked. So that's probably the easiest way to explain it in terms of how important this is. But that's pretty much all we had on the TradFi front. We know that we're going to get that CPI reading tomorrow. Bond yields, very boring. If we look at the stock market, it looks like the big seven are doing pretty shitty today. Nothing too crazy. Obviously, Microsoft not doing terrible, and neither is Netflix. But the other ones, Nvidia is down $8, $9. Amazon's down $1.50. Meta's down $8 or so, $7.50. So nothing too crazy on that front. Oil still holding in there, and then gold. Obviously, people were saying that gold was going to go to all-time highs. Well, it did, but it didn't stay there very long because we don't tend to see gold do really well if there is a liquidity crisis, or liquidity is going to be the most important thing. People will likely sell off the metal and they'll buy back in later once the Dow to gold trade seems more profitable. It's something that you tend to see once the markets begin to collapse a month or so after. So something we'll keep an eye on that. But under 2,000, again, interesting. We still see that on the weekly. We have plenty of room to the downside. So watch out for those EMAs, 50 and 200 EMA on the weekly. I think 1771 is also an interesting level to keep an eye on before we start to move up for gold, which I do think it will also break all-time highs once again. Now, we talked about this before the show. Bitcoin, the flash crash. Let's take a look at it. What do you want to specifically look at today? Do you want to look at Bitcoin, or do you want to look at the alts or dominance, liquidations, a little bit of everything?
Let's go Bitcoin, and then we'll jump into some alts.
Absolutely. All right, so Bitcoin, here we are. We're looking at this chart. And I'm just going to pull this up because it's really nasty here. Look at that weekly candle, man. One day into the week, that thing is pretty nasty. I'm not surprised. I mean, we're at 100 and 100 on the weekly for the stochastic RSI. It's the most overbought it's been some time. The last time was probably April 2023, which is also the pretty good tether pump that we got back here. Is what it is. But yeah, I mean, this is just high level, not getting into it too much. Parallel channel, we wicked above it, we closed above it, and then we just got rejected from it come the weekly open, right? And we're gonna have to see how this plays out moving into the end of the year. But I do think that there are profits being taken. We talked about liquidity being another issue, where if it's in a liquid market and it's low volume, there's a good chance you can move the market in any way that you so desire if you are a market maker. And that's 100% what I'm seeing here. I'm not seeing anything other than just trading within this parallel channel. Could they push it up beyond it? Sure, they've done it before. But again, I don't think that we have broken any structure to the downside, this is still one massive ABC correction when you look at this out on the monthly for the time being.
Yeah, so let's if you want to pull up the liquidation numbers, I think there was something north of 300 million liquidated in longs. And this kind of goes back to when we were talking about market was going to go down, They were just crushing the shorts, right?
Yeah.
You see all this short money accumulate right near the line, boom, it dropped down and it just cut everyone's losses.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it almost seems to be kind of what we're seeing right now, right? Is you had everyone hop into, we're so back, the bull market's back, this is the super cycle, right? And right as that peak bullish vibe is coming across social media, yeah, we're not so back. It plummeted straight down. It was kind of interesting. If you watched right as Bitcoin was going down, it pretty much just went to the moving average on the hourly and daily. It was at, like 44,000 and it just dropped straight down to where the candle settled. That was the moving average on the Bollinger Bands. And it was just kind of like, man, someone knows where to just stop it real quick. And then, yeah, it's wild though, because, we were talking about those funding rates and how there was literally nothing to borrow and how much that can impact price action. But I don't know. I feel like it's weird to call the market illiquid because I think we're still at a point where people have money sidelined and there's a lot of money sidelined, but people just don't want to take what they view as the risk of being insolvent or liquidated. And the thing that I kind of point to as this example is Blast, which is Blur NFT Market's new layer 2 they're developing. The L2 is not live. They don't have a bridge back from the L2. They just have a smart contract to bridge over. They're offering an APR by integrating liquid staking into the chain. They got $700 million on their unfinished L2 in less than a month since the announcement, and the Blur token caught a quick pump up. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's in a liquid market because no one's pumping money into Bitcoin or ETH other than, some small periods here and there to try and shoot it to the next level. But people want any reason to throw money into the market. It's kind of like what I'm seeing. They're just waiting for what's the sign.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's actually a really good point to make because we do know that there is tons of money on the outside sidelines, right? I think the TradFi pump from October to where we currently are just shows you that corporations still have tons of fucking capital just sidelined waiting to go. It's really interesting when I look at these liquidations because this is kind of what you'd anticipate in a bear market or in a time when people definitely need or want to make as much money as possible given what they're working with. And what I'm seeing here is in a 24-hour rec, we can see that, that ratio is pretty wild. It's almost $462 million of long liquidations against $55 million worth of short liquidations. It came up to over $500 million worth of liquidations. That's an insane amount, given how fast this move has been too, right? This is, we can look at the chart. I'm just going to pull up Bitcoin after this, but it moved down so freaking fast right after the weekly open. And even if we look at this on even the smaller time frames, everything is still long liquidations. Everyone that was going long is getting liquidated. 137 million to 24 million on the 12-hour, almost 100 million on the 4-hour to 11 million on the long to short in that regard. And let's take a look at the funding rates and see how those are kind of shaping up now. It's a little bit of a different story, right? Obviously, we're still seeing a pretty good amount of people going long here. Obviously, there's been a dip. People are going to think that, okay, well, this is the bit of a pullback that we needed. Let's push up from here. We don't know that. It's very hard to gauge what is the top of a market. And I will say that because I think there's a lot of variables that impact the price. I think it was easier back in, July when it was just getting to a point where, okay, everyone was getting, mass bullish. We were seeing a lot of things that kind of played out and then topped off. I think the XRP thing, XRP pump was a really good sign that we were at the top of a market, or at least top of a move for the time given. Right here, I continue to see these funding rates. I still see people fairly bullish still with some of these, current rates.
some of them coming back to even. Obviously BNB. I don't care about BNB to be honest anymore. ADA was just going mass crazy over the weekend, down 10% or so today, and it looks like the market got a little bit of it, tasted a little bit of its own blood, but I don't think that it's over yet. I think people are going to still try and push this up. I mean, we can even see that right now. We're up a little bit. We're only down 6.23%. We're up, I guess, $250 in the past, hour or something like that. We're back, guys. But yeah, I'm not too convinced that this is over yet. Let's look at the liquidation map real quick before we head into some of the alts. But if we look at this on the 7-day, yeah, see, look how much liquidity is built there on the 7-day now, sitting to the upside. That's a very, it tells me that a lot of people are also shorting this move to the downside, and they're just going to play with these fools till they just don't want to deal with this anymore, until it gets out of hand to the point where it's like, okay, we're the market makers, but now there's an issue globally that, it might be smart to take some profits off the top and just kind of let the market do what it's got to do. We'll just short this shit from the top. That's what I would anticipate. But I mean, from where we are currently to, let's be assholes and go all the way to the top, 7.2 billion cumulative leveraged longs all the way up here. If we go all the way down to 35.9, we're roughly 770 million. Obviously, there's a lot more liquidity sitting up here. If you look at this on the daily, same exact thing, right? And I put this on the 30-day. It's a little bit of a different story. Obviously, it tails off down here at about 5.65 billion. Then when we get over here, we got about 6.36 billion. So I think we are going to see that 7-day. Yeah, I think there's a good chance that with, again, Tether printing all that money today, it's a good chance that we could push up a little bit more, liquidate some more, I guess, longs at this point or shorts, and just call it another trading week. It's it's kind of the game we're playing here. They're hunting liquidity. I have no feelings about this whatsoever. I'm not going to open up any shorts yet. I'll open up a short on Coinbase in USD, so I'm safe at some point, just not yet.
Yeah, I don't know where we had it either. You mentioned Cardano had a pretty big move, so I'll give my my half-baked rationale as to why that happened. Charles Hoskinson had a tweet about Grok that went viral, so I got a feeling a bunch of people saw that and they're like, "Boom, Cardano! It's Cardano season." No, well, if we're jumping into alts, I think we got to take a look at CDFI Fund, man.
Yeah.
That token had a weekend.
Pulling that up right now. Here we are.
Yes. So we've been talking about it a little bit over the course of the last few weeks. I mean, it's just been on an absolute tear of a run since early October. But it hit a new local all-time high on Saturday night, I believe. Touched about $4.69, and now it's retraced down to about $3.70. But man, it's been on a run like none other. I mean, I honestly don't know what to say at this point.
Dude, I mean, you pretty much called this one. By calling, I mean, like, you found a fucking gem, and clearly the markets agreed with you. They've been watching our show, and this thing just took off. I also like that it just ended at 469 as the local high, or at least the yearly high. That's hilarious to me. I love this market for that specifically. But yeah, I mean, look at this. This is just a shit missile straight up, right? This is very hard. And that's the thing about crypto too, man. Like, you see these violent moves to the upside, and people think like this thing's going to continue going up, and sometimes it does. Sometimes it absolutely does, and you can just have no control over the market. Again, usually they tend to be smaller market cap coins that we see that without any type of retracement, which we'll get to Bitcoin back later because I just thought of something. But yeah, I mean, eventually these things do come right back down as violently as they did move up. I'm not, bullish on any alts, even though I think that this is a really great call. I just think that, this is a violent move in between just in the past day or so where we've gone to, right? Let's see, this from the top from, what is that, Saturday to where we currently are. It's down almost 21%. If we go down to the low, it's almost down 25%, where it wicked all the way down to earlier today. But yeah, man, there's not a lot of support in terms of just the recent moves that kind of tell me that these moves can be sustained going forward, right?
And that's what's worrying me, right? Is because I was elated when it hit $2, and I was blowing up your phone like it cracked $2. Let's go, right? And there hasn't really been too much support, but it's because it's literally just been going up only, right? Like there's been one or two slight pullbacks kind of testing where it's at. But for the most part, it's either they've just been candling up or chopping sideways. No big downside moves. There was one right after the all-time high, and then a few more since, or the local ATH at 470. But I mean, there really hasn't been too much downward momentum. So that's definitely a good point of caution you brought up, because if the market does decide let's start testing the downside, it can get ugly fast.
Absolutely. And here's one thing that we need to keep an eye on too. I use Bollinger Bands once in a while just to see if things are coiling up to a point where there is going to be a massive move in either direction. Then we can kind of look at the stochastics. But looking at CDFI, obviously you can see those jaws are closing up, and we're also on the bottom of this parallel channel, bottom of this Bollinger Band. So I think that we could bounce off of it, or we could, it's going to be one direction or the other. I would anticipate that it might be a bit of a bounce here, just seeing how, volumes were picking up as the price was going down. Does tell me a little bit. This is the 4 hourly, so it's nothing too crazy. But let's look at the daily. The daily, we're at the top of this move here. So maybe in the shorter time frames, there could be another push to the upside. But on the longer time frames, we could be talking, this could be, and I'm not saying just CDFI itself, but we could be getting to a point where alts are in a very dangerous place. And again, look at this, how tight the Bollinger Bands were back here in October, then just absolutely widened completely, right? We're above the top actually right here on the on the weekly. So we'll see how that closes out this week. But I'm not too.
I mean, just some side notes on what's driving the move, right? Because it's not like everyone just decided to pile into CDFI fund. And we've touched on it a little, but it's a gaming launch pad for projects. Their personal NFT collection, I think last week it was somewhere around a 0.06 ETH floor. They've got two. They're called Mounts and Vanguards of Seed World. Both of them are above 0.4 ETH. I think might be closing in on 0.5. And they've got some pretty big, or pretty, not necessarily big, but highly anticipated ICOs coming on their platform shortly. And the way you access the ICOs or IDOs they do is you buy the token, stake it on their platform. So that's what's been driving up a lot of the demand. They've been having some success in the short term. So we'll see if they can keep on going.
I think it's going to be a matter of what the broader crypto market decides when that price.
I think so as well. I think,
which is unfortunate.
If the crypto market's doing well, right, then more people are going to be trying to get into those ICOs. They might feel better about buying something from Seed World, but if we start moving towards the downside, discretionary spending goes low, I'm dumping my alts first, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to be a race to the bottom at that point, right? Everyone trying to get out and make as much money on the move to the downside. And again, market caps that are super low are always scary to me, just because I do know that they can move faster than anyone anticipates. Shit, look at Bitcoin, right? Let's take a look at a few other things. Let's take a look at total market cap, because we got a good move to the downside. We're down 5.37% today. In terms of how much we're down, it's about 87 billion on the weekly so far. So good move down. We saw that we were pretty high. Where were we? 1.6. What was that? 1.63 trillion. Last week. So we've definitely gotten to a point where maybe this is a bit overblown, and we did break out of this parallel channel, but here we are. We're kind of back in it right now, or we're going to be testing back in it. We got plenty of room to the downside here. 100, and the total market cap completely overbought, and we kind of got this death cross rally. We didn't get the death cross. We rallied out of it, so maybe we are going to get the death cross moving forward. But maybe the 200 and the 50 have to follow up a little bit higher, to the point where they find support and they break and get the death cross somewhere in the 115 to maybe $135 trillion range. Now, other coins that we need to take a look at, and then we'll finish with Bitcoin and just call it a day. ETH, good move to the downside, but it looks like it's just trading this parallel channel, right? It went all the way down to 2142. I haven't had any trades on ETH whatsoever, but seemed like there was a good couple of opportunities to be trading ETH in those ranges. If we look on the shorter time frames, let's go to the 4 hourly. Yeah, it looks like we had a pretty good market maker moves all the way to the upside. If you were able to call that, and then just short that, I mean, that's a pretty good move. It broke through the 50 moving average, found supports, roughly around where we were in November 10th of last month. But for the most part. ETH does look like, I'm not going to say we got the top end, but it seems like this level up here, this 24 level or so on the top top parallel channel line here is probably going to be pretty good resistance moving forward, especially if we got rejected that hard from it.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you there. I was up late, but not really checking the charts on Saturday night, and I completely missed that we hit 2,400. And I mean, that's a rapid ascent from where we were at the beginning of November. So hey, we'll see.
It's going to be really interesting, right? Obviously, ETH has really big levels, but we can see that it's down 6.2% today. I mean, if we get a couple more of these red days, I mean, maybe it's death by 1,000 paper cuts on the ETH BTC pair, and then the USD pair finally bleeds out shortly after. But I mean, we're talking about at least the origin of this channel. I anticipate us retesting, right? So let's say from the top here down to 880. That's a 63% drop. That would make sense to me. Could we stop a little bit earlier than that? Sure, we could stop somewhere around 1100 or so. Maybe test 1533. 1368. There's a lot of levels in here that we are going to definitely try and find support on. Do they hold? That's my question, right? And if we do get to a point where there's just mass sell-off, people mass fear, obviously that's going to lead us into new lows, yearly lows, market cycle lows too. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Bitcoin dominance obviously pulled back. It seems like it's been bleeding out as alts had a pretty good move to the upside over the weekend, whether it was Cardano, Matic. I mean, shit, look at fucking KuCoin, up only, right? That's just exchange tokens. I don't want to fuck with them anymore. Binance was the last exchange token I ever touched, and I don't even know if that'll even exist 2 years from now. But we'll see when we're still doing this show. Last thing, let's look at Bitcoin. And we talked about it before the show, but I mean, a little bit right there. It's not a lot of support. And when I mean that, I mean not a lot of yearly support. That kind of makes sense where we haven't backtested any of this shit. And this move to the downside was the first backtest that we got. And that was just to this channel that we kind of broke out of that probably should have broken down from here. So when you don't test anything, we didn't test anything in the 30K range. No, it tells me that there's just a ton of liquidity sitting there that's, kind of complacent, feeling great about itself. And eventually it's just going to wipe it out. Obviously things have to go up and down. It's stochastic. It's not necessarily linear. This has been linear, just straight up to, even exponential at that point since October. But when I see all of this, I think that, and it's hard to say that we're at the top of a move when, it could be the beginning of the 5-way move to the downside. And I'm talking about like massive 5-way move to the downside, like this level. I don't think it is yet. I think that we are still seeing a lot of people pile into the market, but don't be surprised if it moves just as fast when we test some of these levels, because there's just no support that was built on this move to the upside. And, there's not going to be buyers at those levels or those ranges because they weren't, they never had a chance to buy there in the first place. So they were just chasing that move to the upside. And that's kind of a scary thing when you see how fast everything moved last night off of nothing. There was no news that necessarily scared. It was just sentiment and positioning. I think that bled Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, it was the end of our Basel, right? You gotta keep the vibes high for the weekend. Everyone's gonna party. They're feeling good. Yeah, we can get that table. We can rent that Lambo. Our Basel ends, boom, kill the vibes.
Send them home crying.
Market's bleeding out now, but it's always a funny overlap when there's a good market upward or downward move overlapping with some sort of conference or event.
Yeah, dude, it's I think I lost you there for a second, but there you are. Yeah, it's it was a good way to send them home. It's a little blood in their mouth, right? I got nothing else on the macro front or anything. Is there anything else you want to take a look at or you think is people should be watching moving into tomorrow or just in general with any of these markets? I'm just trying to keep it high level for me personally, but I'm interested to see if you have anything we could talk about before we wrap it up.
Yeah, I don't think anything else for today. I think maybe tomorrow or sometime this week we touch a little bit more on the alts. AVAX has had a pretty nice December. Last week it caught a pretty nice run up, so maybe we talk about AVAX, optimism, and maybe revisit some other coins we've been talking about a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah, we should definitely dive into alts because again, Bitcoin obviously it's fun, but when we're talking about these moves to the downside, it's gonna be more fun when we just look at all these alts that are just blood red, like 20-30% down because Bitcoin decided to sneeze. That's gonna be the most fun. It's a fun time in this market. We'll be back tomorrow. I think we did a great job talking about everything today. House, I'm always glad to have you. I think J-Web will be back tomorrow with us, and we should be doing a normal time. If not, follow us on Twitter, and you'll be able to keep up with any changes in time. Thank you for also being here for this change in time today. We will be here with CPI data. That's pretty much all we're going to be looking forward to tomorrow. We're going to CPI data, and then obviously Wednesday PPI, FOMC. It's going to be a really interesting, volatile week, but I don't know. Maybe we're going to send them home or send them to Christmas dinner with more blood in their mouth. It really depends. I'm all for it, right? Give me danger. But that'll wrap us up for today. House, thank you for being here. Everyone else, thank you guys. Give us a thumbs up, like, subscribe. You know the drill. Take care, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.